Pam Bondi was never supposed to say those words out loud. She entered that hearing room as the Attorney General of the United States, calm, prepared, confident, and completely in control. But the second she began speaking, the atmosphere instantly changed. It was not because she repeated a rumor or pushed another theory. It was because the nation's highest law enforcement official made a direct statement involving a sitting president, and the entire room froze the moment it happened. Even the judge overseeing the proceedings leaned back in silence because there was nothing left to interrupt. The moment had already landed. This is the story of how that moment happened, what led up to it, what it exposed, and why people closest to the case believe the fallout is only beginning. It starts in the place most people avoid talking about. February 21st, 2025. Pam Bondi appears on Fox News and gets asked a simple question about Jeffrey Epstein's alleged client list. Will it finally be released? Bondi does not hesitate. She stares directly into the camera and delivers 5 words that immediately follow her everywhere. It's sitting on my desk. The host pauses in shock while Bondi continues speaking. She says she is reviewing the material herself, that President Trump directed the process, and that there is a lot of information involved. A lot. Within hours, the clip spreads across social media. MAGA influencers celebrate. Supporters claim Bondi is finally going to expose everyone tied to Epstein. People believe the names are coming. They believe justice is finally close. That interview became the starting point, and what happened next was far bigger than anyone inside Washington expected. To understand why this matters, you first have to understand who Pam Bondi was in Trump's political world. She was not some random appointment chosen out of nowhere. She was a longtime loyalist, the former Attorney General of Florida, someone who had spent years close to Trump's orbit and understood exactly how the system worked. The rule was simple. You protect the president. You never embarrass the president. You guide the narrative in the direction the president wants. That was the assignment, and for weeks it looked like Bondi was following it perfectly. Just 6 days after that Fox News appearance, Bondi organized a White House event and invited several MAGA influencers to attend. Cameras filled the room while she handed out binders labeled as the first phase of the Epstein files. The media instantly ran with the story. Influencers flipped through the pages on camera, while headlines claimed major disclosures were finally arriving. It looked like a huge breakthrough, but almost immediately something felt wrong. Journalists reviewing the binders noticed it first, then lawyers, then anyone paying close attention. Most of the material inside those binders was not new at all. Much of it had already been public for years, including court filings, old records, previous news reports, and information that had already circulated online. The massive release people were expecting turned out to be mostly recycled material, packaged as something explosive. The mood quietly shifted. Not in some dramatic way, but slowly, like a tide changing before anyone standing on shore notices it happening. Then came the hearing that changed everything. February 11th, 2025. The Senate Judiciary Committee. Bondi sits across from senators who have been waiting for answers about the Epstein files for months. The files had been promised repeatedly, yet almost nothing new had actually appeared. Senators from both political parties wanted explanations, and this is where the hearing stopped feeling ceremonial and started becoming serious. Democratic senators began questioning Bondi about Trump's connection to Epstein, about the photos, about their past relationship, and about the famous 2002 quote where Trump described Epstein as a terrific guy. Bondi answered carefully. Every response sounded controlled and clinical. She dodged questions, redirected conversations, and avoided directly addressing Epstein's victims. The senators kept pushing harder while Bondi continued holding the line, but behind the scenes, something had already happened that completely changed the meaning of the entire conversation. In May 2025, Pam Bondi met privately with President Trump at the White House during what officials later described as a routine briefing. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche was reportedly present as well. By that point, the Justice Department had completed a large portion of its review into the Epstein material, and according to later reporting, Bondi informed Trump that his name appeared in the files. Not as a suspect, not as someone being investigated, but mentioned multiple times alongside many other high-profile individuals connected to Epstein over the years. Bondi reportedly explained that investigators viewed the references as unverified claims and hearsay from people connected to Epstein, not proof of wrongdoing. Trump was told that simply appearing in the files did not mean criminal involvement. Then, the meeting ended. But 2 months later, the Wall Street Journal published details about that private briefing. Suddenly, the public learned that Trump's name had appeared in the files and that he had apparently been informed about it months earlier. The problem was that Trump had publicly suggested something very different. He described the briefing as quick and routine and claimed Bondi had not really told him anything significant. But according to the reporting, the briefing had been far more serious than that. And once that contradiction became public, the story moved into dangerous territory nobody fully expected. Now there were two conflicting realities sitting out in the open. The president publicly acting as if he had not been informed, while the attorney general who briefed him was trapped between loyalty to Trump and the existence of a documented record. What makes Bondi's role so extraordinary is that she was never just a background figure in this story. She was the person who publicly claimed the client list was sitting on her desk. She was the person who staged the White House binder event. She was also the person who went on television in May and reportedly claimed the Epstein files included tens of thousands of videos involving children and child pornography. That was not a vague statement. It was specific, explosive, and delivered by the Attorney General of the United States. Then just weeks later, Kash Patel appeared to soften and walk back parts of those claims. And on July 7th, the Justice Department released a memo that completely changed the public narrative. The memo stated investigators found no incriminating client list. It stated no further disclosures were necessary. It stated there was no credible evidence of a blackmail operation connected to Epstein. It officially reaffirmed that Epstein's death was ruled a suicide. In one moment, nearly everything Bondi had spent months hinting would eventually be revealed was either declared non-existent or officially not releasable. Something cracked after that memo dropped. Not loudly, but undeniably. On July 12th, Trump posted on Truth Social saying, "We're on one team MAGA, and I don't like what's happening." He was responding to growing anger from his own supporters over the Epstein files. Many people who believed they had been promised accountability now felt like they had received nothing more than another carefully written press statement. The same influencers who proudly posed with those White House binders suddenly felt misled, and Bondi found herself at the center of the backlash. She had made the promises. She built the anticipation. She oversaw a release that failed to satisfy the very audience it was designed to excite. Then, on April 2nd, 2026, Donald Trump fired Pam Bondi. The announcement appeared on Truth Social, where Trump described her as a great American patriot transitioning into the private sector. The language sounded respectful and polished, but it carefully avoided explaining why she was removed. People close to the situation reportedly believed the reason was obvious. The Epstein files situation had become politically damaging. What was supposed to be a major victory turned into a growing liability. But even that was not the end of the story, because Congress had already started paying attention. The House Oversight Committee had subpoenaed Bondi and demanded testimony regarding the Justice Department's handling of the Epstein files. Investigators specifically wanted sworn answers about what Bondi said publicly, what she told Trump privately, and how the DOJ managed the release process. Bondi had originally been expected to appear on April 14th, but after she was fired, the DOJ argued the subpoena no longer applied because she was no longer serving in office. Democrats on the committee immediately threatened contempt proceedings. Congressman Robert Garcia publicly stated there had been almost no communication from Bondi's legal team and insisted she was still legally required to testify. Then this week, a new date was confirmed. May 29th, 2026. Bondi is now expected to sit for a recorded congressional interview. Think about what that means. A former attorney general, fired by the president she once protected, now forced to sit in front of investigators and explain everything connected to those files. What she said publicly. What she privately told Trump. What happened between claiming the client list sat on her desk and the DOJ later announcing no incriminating client list existed at all. Legal analysts keep returning to one idea when discussing this case, the concept of the locked-in statement. When someone in power makes a public claim, especially on camera, and especially while serving as the chief law enforcement officer of the country, that statement becomes permanent. It can later be compared against testimony, records, memos, and official documents. Bondi publicly claimed the client list existed on her desk, while the DOJ later officially stated no such incriminating list existed. Those two realities now sit side by side in the public record, and on May 29th, investigators will attempt to force an explanation that connects them. Meanwhile, another layer of controversy appeared after the Wall Street Journal reported on an alleged birthday letter sent to Epstein years earlier. According to the report, Ghislaine Maxwell assembled a leather-bound birthday album for Epstein's 50th birthday in 2003 containing letters from multiple high-profile figures, including one allegedly tied to Trump. The journal claimed the letter included typed text surrounded by the outline of a hand-drawn naked woman alongside Trump's signature. Trump has denied writing the letter and later filed a lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal over the report. That lawsuit is still ongoing. This is the structure of the situation now. A former attorney general publicly built a narrative around Epstein transparency, oversaw a release contradicted by her own department's memo, briefed the president about his name appearing in the files, watched the president later deny the seriousness of that briefing, got fired, and is now preparing to testify before Congress with all of those statements sitting permanently on record. The judge who remained silent during those earlier hearings was not silent because nothing important was happening. He stayed silent because everything was happening all at once. A statement had entered the room that could never be taken back. A former attorney general publicly confirmed that the sitting president's name appeared in the files connected to one of the most notorious sex traffickers in modern American history. Then the president claimed he was never really told. Then reports suggested he was. 4 simple words started the entire chain reaction. Sitting on my desk. Those words triggered hearings, subpoenas, lawsuits, firings, interviews, and transcripts that are still being built in real time. And the story still is not over. May 29th is approaching fast. Investigators will have the documents in front of them. They will have transcripts, television appearances, DOJ memos, and every public statement Bondi ever made. She will no longer be protected by the office she once held. She will sit there simply as a person who made very specific claims that now appear to conflict with the official record. The courtroom went silent when those claims first surfaced, but that silence was never the ending. It was the beginning of something much bigger. What comes out of that interview may determine whether that silence was simply the calm before a political reckoning or just another chapter in a story that never gives the public the closure it keeps expecting. The files still exist. The transcripts are still being prepared. The questions are already waiting. And whatever Pam Bondi truly knew, and whatever she chose to say publicly, is about to be tested inside a room where every answer can be compared directly against documents already sitting on the table. In rooms like that, the truth has a way of finding itself into the record whether anyone wants it there or not.